And the next team, Spaci.
Thank you. G'day everyone. We're Natalie, Jonathan and Adam from Sydney, Australia, and we're going to disrupt the event industry with our company Spaci, the Airbnb of venue hire. A problem that we've identified were that people were struggling to find venues that had a relaxed and homey atmosphere to them and were also within their budget. So our solution? A web marketplace for people to list their free spaces for hire, providing users with access to unique and affordable venues, and also providing the opportunity for venue owners to generate additional income off what is potentially an idling asset.
Does that mean I can rent my farm barn, Nat?
Yes.
How about my office space?
Yes.
My own home?
Yes. That is the beauty of Spaci, is that unlike our competitors, we will not restrict our listings to simply commercial venues. That is venues such as clubs, pubs, bars and function centres. Whilst our research showed that clubs are still an in-demand venue, so too are farms and estates, community halls and warehouses. This brings us to our initial target market, farms and estates. Pictured here is an image of our first venue, a historic house and garden located in Camden, a beautiful rural region about an hour's drive west of Sydney. The reason that we've chosen rural estates first is because according to bridalguide.com, vintage and rustic are two of the biggest wedding trends at the moment. Think of what you've seen on Pinterest. Mason jars, fairy lights, DIY decorations, all in a beautiful rural setting. This leads us to our initial market segment, weddings. There are over 116,000 weddings in Australia each year, and these brides and grooms are spending big. The average cost of a wedding is now $36,000, which equates to about $25,000 US. The Australian wedding hire industry is valued at $4.3 billion, but this pales in comparison to the US industry of $55 billion US. In Australia, 1/3 of this industry accounts for venue hire at $1.44 billion, and this is forecast to grow by 7% over the next few years to be a $4.7 billion industry. So why have we chosen venue hire? Well, it is an industry that is yet to face disruption. Why should events just be limited to commercial venues? Why can't you make additional income by listing your event space for hire? Looking at our competitors here, you can see that none of them currently allow for the listing of residential properties. Party Star has a criteria of that all venues must be licensed and within 20 kilometres of the Sydney CBD, a very limiting criteria. This brings us to our competitive advantage. Our key one will be in our comprehensiveness. An additional advantage will be in the form of 3D tours. Using the API from Photosynth, a software developed by Microsoft, users will be able to upload images and automatically form a 3D tour of their space, allowing our users to tour venues right from the comfort of their own home. In addition to this, we will also be implementing a progressive algorithm so that users can sort by venues tailored to their specific needs, such as how many people, cost, location, proximity to public transport, and other important metrics. Our market launch strategy, a key part of this strategy will be in search engine optimization, SEO. This is essentially ranking #1 in Google for key search terms, such as wedding venues or venue hire Sydney. In addition to this, we'll be creating relevant content on the blog section of our site, being active in wedding forums, and contacting local churches so they can advise engaged couples of our services should they be struggling to find a reception venue. We'll also be engaging in paid advertising through Facebook and Google AdWords. As Spaci is essentially a marketplace, bringing together the buyer and the seller, part of our strategy must also involve getting the venues on board. This will be through sales techniques such as phones, emails, flyer drops, door-to-door visits, and lots of determination. Jonathan will now take you through our financial modelling.
Okay, so we will be implementing 2 revenue streams. The first is that of a 10% commission on the total price of venues booked through our website. The second relates to business alliances that will provide services to the same customers that we have. So, for example, if you're booking a flight on JetBlue and you're trying to get your $50 air flight, but they're charging you, or they're adding on your rental for a car at the other end and accommodation, those added extras is what we will try to do with Spaci as well. So, for example, florists, catering services, musicians, security, luxury car hire companies will all be at the end of that, and we will have another revenue stream, which is through pay-per-leads and pay-per-clicks when they're redirected to their site. So as you can see here, you might need to invest in some clearer goggles. I'm kidding. I bring it forward. So I'll just talk to how we got our numbers. We went to our major competitor, which is Venue Mob, who has almost 1,000 venues in Sydney and in Melbourne, respectively. We've taken the lowest price that we could find for a wedding listed on their website and the lowest price that we could find for hiring a bar for a 21st, for example. And we've taken those prices and input them into our formula, which is 400 weddings and 400 others. And 122,000 is the forecast for the first year. In our second year, we hope to get into Melbourne and replicate Sydney's first year revenue. And in the third year, as you can see, we are upping in the amount of weddings and the amount of other events significantly, and to again replicate Sydney's second year in Melbourne. I'll now talk to the cost and profit structure. So in the first year, there will be business setup fees and website development, and largely a lot in advertisement. We won't be taking a salary, and we won't have any employees in the first year. Legal fees are striked off, as we have family connections that have agreed to help us out at no cost, which is good. In the second year, expenses increase significantly as we plan to take on sales employees and a developer and pay ourselves $40,000 each, as well as acquire office space in a co-working environment in Sydney startup area. And in the third year, that increases significantly as well, as you can see there. So we are asking for $70,000 in funding in exchange for 10% equity. And the way we'll pay this back is 10% of the profits, net profit after tax each year, which will pay back the face value of the loan of the amount in the fourth year. And in the fifth year, we will continue at 10% net profit after tax, unless, of course, the investor wants to reinvest that. So I bring it back to Natalie.
So I know what you're all thinking. This is an excellent idea. This is a scalable business. But who is the team that's going to execute it? Well, let me introduce you to the A team. I'm Natalie, and I'm a current marketing student and also work as a product manager in a Sydney startup. I'll be heading up the PR and marketing team. This is Jonathan, an accounting student in his final year who works at a property firm. He'll be heading up the finance and sales team. And over here is Adam, our IT guru, who will oversee the development of the website and take charge of the technology team. So join us as we disrupt the event industry in our quest to create the Airbnb for venue hire. Spaci, unique spaces in beautiful places.
Excellent presentation, thank you. My first question, I know here in the States, the Airbnb, the Ubers and all are facing a lot of regulatory challenges. Have you guys investigated that in the Australian market, and what are the prospects there?
That's what we've accounted for in our initial setup costs, is getting legal advice to protect us for liability and have a disclaimer in place. We intend to be that third party that isn't actually active in, we're not the actual venue, so we're going to be ensuring that all venues have their own insurance in place to account for this. We'll also be looking into like the alcohol serving laws. That is something that we have thought about and we have tried to address, but due to the lack of legal knowledge in our team, we can't say what that is at the moment.
Most venues in Sydney, including personal homes, should have public liability insurance, which generally is up to 20 million Australian dollars. We will advise that through a contract as well that each venue has to have their own public liability insurance, as well as indemnify us as well, so there'll be another form there. As well, there should be, and there will be, terms and conditions where our customers, so customers of venue hire, have to agree to take responsibility for their actions in the venues. However, we will have our own insurance as well, as it is essential.
Great presentation. This is fun. When I saw the name, I was like, oh, Airbnb, and that's where you identified the space. I'm curious how you're going. What are the characteristics you're looking for to assemble your inventory of spaces? How are you going to determine what spaces you want to advertise?
So this is something that we have thought about, and that we don't just want to allow any old venue to advertise. There will be some sort of screening process. Obviously ones that are in good locations and easily accessible. And also that in the first year we perhaps may be more relaxed with these rules as we try to build up our database. And then moving forward, then we would implement a more rigid screening process so that we can really show those unique venues.
And do you have a plan in place for measuring customer satisfaction?
There'll be a review system, so that makes the venues accountable, and it also makes the hosts accountable. So that's a similar system to how Airbnb has, so that if you're a venue, you can build up credibility, and if you're a host, you can also build up credibility. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Actually, Airbnb has been brought up a lot. Do you see them as a competitor in this space?
Not with their current offerings. We do see them as a potential threat should they decide to move into this market. That's where we're hoping to grow as fast as we can, really build up a large profile of venues and build up those key rankings in Google, which are really quite valuable. As part of our exit strategy, should Airbnb start to compete in this space, and when unable to compete with them, our hope would to be acquired, because we will have built up a valuable database.
And have you already enlisted several places that you have in mind as partners? I mean, have you actually started that process? How far along are you on the company?
So we've it's been essentially market research at this stage and gathering the requirements to enter into the development of the site. We currently have the domain spaci.com.au, and we've investigated purchasing spaci.com, which is accounted for in our first year costs, which is at $3,000. We have our first venue on board in Sydney, and we've been talking to quite a few people. We actually also have, when we expand to the US, a venue in Blacksburg, in the home of my host family, Maureen's venue, is on a beautiful farm property on Catawba Road, and she would love to host venues and make some additional income there on her farm.
And in Sydney, where that first listing is, where you saw that, there are many other places nearby that are much the same. And we do have in mind where we're going to go first for those. So the first, Spaci wants to have spaces for any event, but as you can see, wedding hire is massive. So that's our focus point for the first year, just somewhere to go. And from that, we will get on other venues as well. But initially, it's get those unique venues for weddings, because we think that in our results from our survey as well, that people are getting sick and tired of function halls, and they want something different, and to be outside, that sort of backyard wedding. So that's what we're going for initially.
Yeah, I would definitely exploit those local contacts that you have, and use that as a competitive advantage. Okay, so actually, some questions from the audience. I think this one was already covered, but insurance, I believe you've specified that everybody has to have their own insurance. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a requirement in Australia to have public liability insurance on your own property as part of your home and contents insurance.
Which covers up to 20 million Australian.
Okay, and this was actually the question I had. What if Airbnb starts covering your market?
Well, so in the US, there are a couple of big players in venue hire at the moment. We haven't found any that do private listings, but I think this has been going for at least 2 or 3 years now, and Airbnb hasn't decided to make a move on that yet.
Okay. Why did you pick 400 weddings as a first-year starting point?
Yeah,
where did that come from?
Thanks for asking that question. I didn't know if I had much time in the presentation to get to it, so. Okay. So in the first year, we plan to get 100 venues on board. 50 of those will be at least wedding venues, 50 of those non-wedding venues. Now we have identified that there are 40 weeks in Australia. I'll just stand over here. 40 weeks in Australia where people are happy to get have weddings. So it's just excluding winter. So we, in the forecast, we are saying that one wedding at one of these places would go over an entire weekend because there's a setup and there's a pack-up. So you could only host one wedding at each venue each weekend. 40 weeks, so the best case scenario there is that every single weekend will be taken up by every single venue we have on board. So say 50 for weddings, but that's quite unlikely because we can't expect to get every single booking through us. They have their own booking systems, I'm sure. Would like to get more. But so to get 400 bookings from weddings in the first year means that we would need to get at least 8 bookings on each of those 100 venues within that 40-week period with us, which is 5%. Similarly with the other 50 venues, other events. It's not just one weekend long event. Usually it's a night in Sydney, Friday night or Saturday night, best case scenario. So we've taken Friday and Saturday nights and in that 40-week summer, autumn, spring, cancelled out winter, and that's 80 prime dates, Saturdays and Sundays in that period. So that's to get 50 in there is about the same as well. It's eight bookings each. Again, pretty doable. And in the second year, we plan to have 300 venues. 250 of those. Okay, so that's adding another 250 to our weddings. Anyway, the average is 8 the whole way through, from year 1 to year 3 in our financials, upping it from 100 venues that we have on board, 300 to 500 in the last year.
Okay.
And I spoke about the average price, earlier on.
Okay.
Is that clear? Did you want me to explain that again?
I think you got that.
Cool.
I guess the question for Natalie, are you willing to quit your project management job to do this full time?
I'd like to work for myself. I'm learning a lot at my current job, but should the opportunity come in Spaci to move into working on this full time, I would jump at the opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much.
Ask me if I want to quit accounting.
Are you? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.